Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. মাত্র 9 জন। ঠিক আছে, 5 মিনিট ওয়েট করি আর দেখি। রাহুল গুপ্তা, রাতুল আছো? ঋষিকেশ,
Yes, sir.
স্নেহা, সৌম্যদীপ, দীপ্তি, বিকাশ। Okay, so the next topic that what we'll start is the relational data model, right? Okay, so this is the relational database, right? And that theory is given by that EF got, right? And this is the definition. This is the book is the definition of a relation, right? So what is it? Now, it is a set of tuples, right? It is a set of tuples like D1, D2, D3. Hello? আরে পাখি ডাকছে, আমি কি করি বলো? দাঁড়া একটু ওয়েট। হ্যালো, এবার শোনা যাচ্ছে? দেখো তো। হ্যালো, কমেছে কিছুটা?
স্যার ঠিকই আছে।
না, পাখি ডাকছে প্রচুর, না পাখি ঘরের মধ্যে ঢুকে যাবে, এটাই সমস্যা হয়েছে। Okay, so what is it? It is a set of tuples, that is d1, d2, d3, so on, where each element dj is a member of capital Dj. What is capital D? This is the domain. These are the domains, right? These are the domains, and d1, d2, d3, small d1, d2, d3. These are all that tuples. So this is the uh, formal definition, right? Normally, what is the relation? That already we know that relation is what? This is actually the table, what we called as a table. This is actually known as the relation. And what is the attribute? The attribute is name paired with a domain, right? So this is the attribute. ID is the attribute, name is the attribute, address is the attribute, and what is the domain? That the data type is actually known as the domain. So that ID. But if you remember about the yesterday, the lab of yesterday. So what is the domain of the student ID? This is the varchar 2, right? What is the domain of the name? This is also the varchar 2, means this is the string, right? In ID you can use the alphanumeric characters. If you consider about the date of birth, so what is the domain? It is a date, right? Mobile number, what is the domain? This is the number, it's an integer, you can say, right? So these are the domain of the attribute, fine. And what is the value of the attribute? So these are the value, like if id is the integer, so this 102202 104 152, so these are the value, attribute value. Sorry, attribute value is this one. Sorry, the attribute value is the name of the attribute, right? So the name of the attribute is known as the attribute value, that id, name, address, so these are known as the attribute value. And tuple is what? These are the set of values associated with each attribute, fine. So what I told you, that this is id is what? This is the attribute. Integer is what? This is the domain of that attribute. This, these are the attribute values, and a complete row is known as the tuple. A complete row is known as the tuple. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the number of attribute is known as the degree. Means the number of attribute is known as the what? This is known as the degree of that relation. Okay. This is another bookish definition, which is known as the reliever. The full form is the relation variable, right? The full form is what? The full form is relation variable, and this is actually not using now. The term has been obsoleted, and a reliever is nothing what you are treating as a relation now, means that table is actually known as the reliever. So now actually we are treating this as a relation, right? Means we are not using that reliever. It was used by Caesar date, and it was a long time ago, but now it is actually treated as a name relation, right? And this relation is actually combination of what? These are the all the attributes and their value, right? So just remember that term, nothing else. Optimizer is there. These are the different terms used in DBMS, and in detail also we will do this. That called query optimization is there, transaction is there, right? So catalog is there. So optimizer is nothing that it is actually uh, what the query you are firing, right? What the query you are firing. So it is actually analyzing that the request what you are actually firing. Fine. And it is means suppose you are asking for the student ID. Suppose you are asking for the student name whose ID is 103, or suppose if you compare, suppose you are asking for the address of the person whose ID is 104, right? So this is the query, and with respect to the optimizer, the system is determining how to implement the user request. Okay, and it is actually locating the desired data, and it is actually retrieving the data from the database. Transaction is also there. Uh, One transaction means it is actually involving several database operations, and it is begin with the begin transaction. Total two flag is there, right? Means if the transaction is successfully terminated, then it is known as the uh, commit, means the commit is fired. If it is not successfully terminated, means if it is aborted in the middle of the transaction, then you need to fire the rollback, right? And obviously the transaction should follow the ACID property, that the transaction should be atomic, it should be consistent, it should be isolated, it should be durable, right? Every transaction should follow these four properties. That also we will do in detail when we will do the transaction processing. If you remember about the book catalog, right? Means if you see, suppose the catalog, suppose you went to you went to a restaurant and you ask for the catalog, that what is the actually it is giving, the catalog is the brief of the item what the restaurant is offering to the customers, right? The name of the item, the different types of dishes, the name of the item and the price. So this is the catalog, তাই তো, যেটা আমরা দেখি already. Similarly, and some descriptions are also given in some catalog, that the description of the item is also given. So here also the same thing, that everything in the catalog of the database, everything is mapped, means all the external conceptual internal schema, the data, everything, all the details, means I told you the metadata, the data about data, everything is stored uh, in the catalog. The catalog contains the detailed information regarding the various object that are of interest to the system itself, right? So it can be the real verse, I mean the relations of the data inside the relations, indexes, integrity constraints, security constraints, right? The query what you are firing. So everything is stored inside that catalog. Okay. If
Yes, sir.
now from the SQL point of view, means if you if you want to define the catalog in SQL point of view, so it is what it is synonymous with the database, right? Means in SQL what we are creating the database. So catalog is what the whole database, right? What you are creating. This is the whole database, because when you will create more than two or three database, when you will create more than two or three database, and you use the primary key for the relationship, primary key and the foreign key. So at that time was this is actually the whole catalog, isn't it? So that's why in most SQL DBMS, if you query the information schema views, you will find that the value in the table catalog column mapped to the name of the database. So this is the SQL point. Means if you consider from the SQL point of view, so the whole database is actually known as the catalog. This is not needed. View already you know. This is the portion of the database. The definition is different here. these two terms. View is nothing but it's a portion of the database which is uh, permissible to access for a particular user, right? And the administrator, the DBA, is actually can set the view for each user, right? So in a good language, you can say the view is what is a reliever whose value at any given time is such a derived relation. And the value of such reliever at any given time is whatever results from the means. Suppose you have a complete relation, so view is known as the derived relation because the complete relation is not visible to you, right? The complete table, the complete database is not permissible to visible for the access. Right? A portion of the database is visible to you. This is the view only. This is the repetitive one. This is the ER model. মনে আছে কারো ER model? আছে মনে আছে? কার কার মনে নেই? অঙ্কিতা মনে আছে? ঋষিকেশ, প্রিয়া মনে আছে? হ্যালো,
স্যার কমন একটু দেখি, ভুলে গেছি, দেখলে মনে পড়ে যাবে। হ্যাঁ স্যার, খুব একটা মনে নেই।
ভালো, ওকে। So first, let us go through the Court's rule, right? First, go through the Court's rule. Then we will go to the different parts of the different components of VR model. First one is the foundation rule. What is it? A relational database management system must be able to manage databases entirely through its relational capabilities. Means if a system seem to be a relational database management system, right? Suppose you have created a database and that database is claiming that it's performing a relational database management system. So obviously that management system should be able to manage all the databases with all the relational point of view, right? Like Oracle, the software what I'm using for the DBMS or Dbms software. So when the Oracle have the developed that software, so obviously that software should be capable to create the database, create the relational database, right? To create to insert the table, the data, and to update or to alter the database, to fire the query. So it should capable of all the relational uh, properties, right? So this is the foundation. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Next is the information rule. Data stored in relational model must be a value of some cell of a table. Obviously means what the data you are storing, that must be a value like ID. So that ID, the data what you are storing for the student ID, so that should be some value. It can be S101, it can be simply 102. So it depends on the domain, right? But that must be some value, right? Guaranteed access rule. Every data element must be accessible by table name, its primary key, and name of the attribute whose value is to be determined. Obviously, see, yesterday also I have fired on one query. Select star from student, right? So student is what? This is the table name. So select star from means
Yes, sir.
so select star from student. So star from means that so that star from means this is the all row. Star from means all row, means give the result, select all row from student. This is what, this is the name of the table. So whatever you want to do, you have to do with respect to the table name. If two tables are there, we will do that. You have to use the primary key also, means you need to compare with respect to the primary key. Where if you want to access the data from more than one table, so then you need to access through this primary key. You need to validate the primary key, right? So that we will do. And the name of the attribute means what you want to fire. So suppose here I want to that like select std what is this std name, I think. Select std name, comma dob from student, where std id is equals to like s101. So this is one query, and what it will give? It will give you the name and date of birth of that student whose ID is 101, right? So here you can see that we are firing the query with respect to the table name, right? And these are what? These are the data. These are the attribute. What I want the data of regarding this attribute, and the condition has been given that I want the data of this student only. बोर्ड दिए से काट दिस ले और बैग पे बैग है बैग तो नहीं. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Systematic treatment of null values. Null value in database must only corresponds to missing, unknown or not applicable values. Otherwise, all the values should be not null. Right. So generally, null value we are not giving. So if you give if you left any data blank, so that is considered as a null value, and this is considered as a missing or unknown or not applicable values, right? Otherwise, all the data, all the relation should be fulfilled with the proper data. Active online catalog. The structure of database must be stored in an online catalog which can be queried by authorized user. So the whole database is the catalog, from where you can fire on which you can fire the query to get the result. Comprehensive data sublanguage rule. So our database should be accessible by a language supported for definition, manipulation and transaction. We have the SQL, right, which supports all the DML, DTL, DCL, right, DTL, everything. View updating rule. Different views created for various purposes should be automatically updated by the system. Yes, we have that also, that if the DBA wants to update the view of a particular user or set of users, so that also it can be done through the Oracle. Right? High level insert, update and delete rules also there. Relational model should support insert, delete, update, etc. Right? So that also it is supported, as well as the set operations like union, intersections, minus, right, join. Different joins are also there, so that also should be supported when you are creating a RDBMS. There should be a physical level data independence and the logical level data independence. Integrity independence should be there. Right. Distribution independence is also there. Means the distribution of data over various locations should not be visible to the end users, obviously. There should not be any low level access of the data, so that you can change the data. Means you can hamper the integrity rules, right? Integrity rules is what? This is the modification of at the application level. Right? Means data should be integrated. Data integrity should be followed. And what is it? Means there should not be any such modification rule at the application level. It should be in the code level, right? So this is the integrity constraint. Any question? Any question?
No, sir.
বাকিদের আর কোনো কোশ্চেন আছে? বলো। সৌমিলি বুঝতে পেরেছো? বিকাশ,
Yes, sir.
ऋषिकेश, सो रहे हो क्या?
No, sir.
समझ में आया?
Yes, sir.
So next is, this is the ER model, right? So this is what? This is one of the data model where the data are represented, means through entity, and the entities are in relation with another entity, right? So that's why it is known as the entity relationship model. It develops a conceptual design for the database. It also develops a very simple and easy to design view of data, and you can directly convert your ER model to the relational database. Some rules are there that also we will do. So what are the components? The entity, right? Two types of entities are there: strong entity and the weak entity, attribute and the relation. And what? So these three components, three are the components of ER model. Attributes can be of different types: key attribute, composite attribute, multivariate attribute, derived attribute. Relations are also of four types: that one to one, one to many, many to one, and many to many. Right? So this is the entity. All the real life objects are treated as an entity. Treated as an entity. So these are generally depicted by rectangle. Right? মনে পড়ছে?
হ্যাঁ স্যার করতে একটু
Okay. So similarly, weak entity is there, and this is represented by double rectangle. Weak entity is nothing which uh, does not contain any key attribute of its own. Right? Like here, one example is given that suppose loan. So loan is an entity, right? And loan has some attributes like uh, that loan amount, right? Loan ID means when you are asking for the loan, for a loan in a bank, so they are giving you the account number. Loan account number is there. Loan account number is there. Loan amount is there, right? Loan uh, type of loan means loan type is also there. So these are the attributes. Installment is an weak entity. Why? Because installment is a part of the loan, means that entity is depend on the loan. Means weak entity is the entity which depend on another entity, right? Means if you don't have the loan, so there is no question of the installment, isn't it? If you don't have the loan, so there is no such an installment, right? Now if you have the loan, then only you need to give the installment. So installment is depend on what? Loan. Otherwise it has no any existence. So that's why installment is a weak entity. Here
yes sir
attribute. So these are represented through an as an eclipse or the oval, right? So these are the attributes, and these are connected with a straight line with the entity. And these are the attributes: the ID, name, age, phone number, right? date of birth. So these are all attributes. Key attribute means these are generally known as the primary key, which are uniquely identify each entity. Key attribute is what? This is the attribute which helps to uniquely identify each entity, like student ID. So the name of the student can be same, but the ID of every student is unique, right? So that's why ID is the key attribute, and it is represented by the oval with the underlined name of the attribute.
सर अपना साउंड असते चालू सर
हाँ, हेलो
सर
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
बोलो।
ও স্যার শুনতে পাচ্ছিলাম না কিছু ঠিক আছে
Next one is the composite attribute. Composite attribute means it can contain the many other attributes, right? Like suppose name, right? So name can be also the composite attribute. Why? Because it can be the F name, right? It can be the middle name, and it can be the last name or the surname, right? Address also can be the address. So address also can be the composite attribute. Why? Because in address it can be the flat number, it can be the road number, it can be the locality, right? Pin code. So this address also can be the composite attribute. Clear? ঠিক আছে?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Multi-valued attribute. Multi-valued attribute is represented by the double oval. So this is the multi-valued attribute. Multi-valued means if your attribute can take more than one value. So you can have more than one phone number, right? So if you have more than one phone number, then that phone number can be a multi-valued attribute. Hobby, it can be also a multi-valued attribute because one person can have more than one hobby, right? So these are the multi-valued attribute. Derived attribute is what? Which can possible to derive from any other attribute, like age, like age. So age is the derived attribute. Why? Because it has derived from where? Date of birth. It has derived from date of birth. So that's why age is known as the derived attribute. And it is represented by the dashed ellipse. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Last. Okay, next. These were notations to represent the relationship. Either you can represent with number, or you can represent through this notations also. Okay, so either you are, so this is the 1 to 1, this is a straight line, so this. Next, this is 1 to many, so 1 to many is represented by this notations. There is one vertical line and this is one, or you can represent 1 to many like this one, like one side and n one side, like 1 to many. Many, this is one or more, this is one or more, this is one and only one, that's two lines only. This is 0 or 1, and this is 0 or many, right? So this is the, and if you can represent, this is many to many, this is many to many. 1 to 1 is there, this is 1 to 1, sorry. So anything you can do, either this one you can use for the notation, or you can simply write the number. ঠিক আছে? Now the keys. So I told you before that it is used for uniquely identify any records or tuples from the table, right? So it is uniquely identify each row of a table or each tuple of a table, like student. So what you have done yesterday, that student ID, name, phone number, date of birth. So each row is giving you the particular details of a student, right? If it is if any one of the key is unique, then only it is possible for you to uniquely identify each row. Otherwise it is not possible. The first one is what? This is the super key. All the keys are more or less same, right? Whatever the keys are here, no? The super key, candidate key, composite key, primary key. So these are more or less same. Actually, these are forming all the groups, right? Everything has the capability to uniquely identify each row and all are related with each other. So all these are related with each other. So just the different names are there because they are forming the groups. So depend on the groups, the names are different. So if I after explanation it will be clear to you. So consider this table. I will explain everything with respect to that table only. Okay, বোঝা যাচ্ছে তো? এই ঘুমাচ্ছ সবাই?
না স্যার
না স্যার ঘুমাচ্ছি না।
সুমন তুমি তো প্রেজেন্ট পাবে না আজকে। তোমরা 10টা 15-র মধ্যে কেন লগ ইন করো না?
স্যার লিংক পেয়েছিলাম না স্যার, ওই জন্য আমি আবার ডবল লিংক চেয়ে জয়েন করলাম, ওই জন্য আমার 10 মিনিট লেট হয়েছে।
লিঙ্ক পাচ্ছে, লিঙ্ক তো তোমার ক্লাসরুমের ওপরেই দেওয়া আছে।
আমি সব ওয়েবসাইটে
আমি দেবো আলাদা করে
লিংক আছে, ওই জন্য ওই একটা লিংকে বারবার যেতে হয়, জানতাম না। আরো নতুন করে লিংক আছে, ওই জন্য লিংকের জন্য অপেক্ষা করেছিলাম।
পরদিন থেকে 10টা 15-র মধ্যে জয়েন করবে।
ওকে স্যার, সরি স্যার।
আর মনে হয় লেটে করেছো কে? আর একজন কে আছে? সায়ন দে, একই কেস। এটা তোমাদের 4th সেম, তাই তো?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
ওকে, তো যাদের যাদের দোজ হু হ্যাভ অলরেডি দ্য ব্যাকলগ, তারা কিন্তু বাই দিস সেমেস্টার ব্যাকলগ ক্লিয়ার করে নেবে। কারণ ফ্রম 5th সেম অনওয়ার্ডস দ্য ক্যাম্পাসিং উইল স্টার্ট, রাইট? অ্যান্ড স্ট্রিক্টলি আগের বছর যেরকম, বাট ইউ ডোন্ট নো অ্যাবাউট দ্যাট ন্যাচারাল ক্যালামিটি, দ্যাট ডিজাস্টার। এই করোনার জন্য কিন্তু এখনো পর্যন্ত আগের যাদের ব্যাকলগ ছিল তাদের এখনো পর্যন্ত ক্লিয়ার হয়নি। সেটা তাদের দোষ নয়, এটা মানে সিচুয়েশন ওরিয়েন্টেড হয়ে গেছে। তো তারা কিন্তু কেউই কিন্তু বসতে পারছে না, পারেনি এখনো পর্যন্ত কোনো ক্যাম্পাসিংয়ে। ভালো স্টুডেন্ট হওয়া সত্ত্বেও বসতে পারেনি, কারণ ব্যাকলগ রয়েছে একটা দুটো করে। তো এটাই রিকোয়েস্ট যে কারোর জন্য কোনো ব্যাকলগ না থাকে। আপ টু 4th সেম পর্যন্ত যার যা ব্যাকলগ আছে সব কিন্তু ক্লিয়ার করে নেবে। 4th সেমের পরে যদি কেউ ব্যাকলগ পাও সেটা তার ব্যাড লাগ, কিছু করার নেই তারপরে। এটা কিন্তু মাথায় ঢুকিয়ে নিই, ব্যাকলগ থাকলে কিন্তু কেউ বসতে পারবে না। সুমন ইয়ে করো, म्यूट करो।
सर कैंपसिंग में सर कंपनीज आएंगी हमारे कॉलेज में?
नहीं, कॉलेज में नहीं आता है। जो TCS CTS विप्रो का जो होता है ना मास कैंपसिंग, तो हम इसको
अच्छा।
बोल रहे हैं। तो दिस ईयर CTS में कोई नहीं बैठा है। अब कोई नहीं मतलब मैक्सिमम जिसका जिसका तुम्हारा ये है क्या बोलते हैं बैकलॉग है, उन लोग नहीं बैठा। तो नंबर ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स आर 12। दे आर क्वालिफाइड बट दे हैव disqualified for that backlog only. The qualification is
স্যার
हाँ
স্যার প্রিভিয়াস ব্যাকলগ থাকলে কি মানে গ্র্যাজুয়েশন সার্টিফিকেট আটকে দেয়, মানে গ্র্যাজুয়েট করেন এরকম করলে?
तो backlog থাকলে তোমাকে সার্টিফিকেট কেন দেবে?
আচ্ছা, মানে ব্যাকলগ ক্লিয়ার হলে তারপর?
হ্যাঁ, তো নিয়ম তো তাই, সার্টিফিকেট দেবে না। হ্যাঁ,
স্যার এনপিটিএল টা আটকে গেল স্যার, এটা কি হবে?
এনপিটিএল আটকে গেল মানে?
স্যার এনপিটিএল তো পরীক্ষা হলো না স্যার, পিছিয়ে গেল।
হবে তো, কোনো না কোনো দিন তো পরীক্ষা হবে, অনলাইন হোক।
স্যার আমাদের মানে স্যার যদি ওই ওই পয়েন্ট হিসেবে ধরা যায় তাহলে তো প্রত্যেক সেমিস্টারে আমাদের এখনো বাকি ছিল ক্যালকুলেশন বাকি। তাহলে স্যার আমরা একটা সেমিস্টার তুলে পিছিয়ে যাব।
দেখো সে তো বুঝতে পারছি আমরাও, কিন্তু কি করব, আমাদের তো হাতে কিছু করার নেই। এখন ইউনিভার্সিটি এরকম করছে, এখন সিচুয়েশন এমন হয়ে গেছে, তো কি করবে? তোমাদের নিশ্চয়ই অ্যাডভান্টেজ দেবে, তার জন্য নিশ্চয়ই এই 2 বছর তো অ্যাডভান্টেজই অ্যাডভান্টেজ। তোমরা তো অ্যাডভান্টেজ পাচ্ছ, আরও পাবে, চাপ নেই। বাট দ্য ব্যাকলগ এক্সাম উইল বি উইথ পেন অ্যান্ড পেপার। হ্যাঁ, এবছর মনে হয় না MCQ হবে। তো ব্যাকলগ যাদের আছে, কার কার এখানে জানি না, তো ইট উইল বি অফ 70 marks পেপার উইথ পেন অ্যান্ড পেপার মেথড। তো এবারে হয়তো এক্সামিনেশন সিস্টেম কিছু চেঞ্জ হবে, বিকজ ইন দিস এক্সাম দ্য কলেজ ফ্যাকাল্টিজ উইল বি ইন ইনভিজিলেশন। তো বাকিগুলোতে কী হবে আমি জানি না।
মানে স্যার সেমিস্টারের ক্ষেত্রে
ব্যাকলগে যাদের এক্সাম আছে তাদের ইনভিজিলেশনের দায়িত্ব আমাদের ওপরে, কলেজ।
না স্যার নর্মাল
নর্মাল এখন জানি না, এখন 8 সিস্টেমটা হয়তো এটা ইমপ্লিমেন্ট করছে, এটাই হয়তো নর্মালি চালু করবে এবার। ওই জন্য আজকে আমাদের মিটিং আছে।
বলছি স্যার সেকেন্ড সেমের ব্যাকলগ থাকলে ওটা তো ফোর্থ সেমে ক্লিয়ার করতে হবে মনে হয়।
হ্যাঁ, এই সেমেস্টারে যাদের মানে এই সেমেস্টারে করতে হবে আর কি। আর এটা হচ্ছে যাদের ওল্ড তাদের জন্য মানে আজ করে দেওয়া। অবশ্য তোমাদের এখন নেই, হ্যাঁ তোমাদের তো বলেও লাগে, তোমাদের তো নেই, থাকার কথা না। ওল্ড সেমেস্টার যাদের তাদের, তো যাদের যা ব্যাকলগ আছে এই সেমেস্টার সব ক্লিয়ার করে ফেলবে, তার জন্য সেরকমভাবে পড়াশোনা স্টার্ট করে দিও।
স্যার কত বলবো স্যার স্যার সেকেন্ড সেমিস্টারে একটা ফোর্থ সেমিস্টার ক্লিয়ার হয়, আবার ফোর্থ সেমিস্টার সিক্স সেমিস্টারে ক্লিয়ার হয়, আবার ফিফথ সেমিস্টারটা কোন সেমিস্টারে ক্লিয়ার হয়?
ওই 6 সেমিস্টারে গিয়ে ক্লিয়ার করতে হবে এখন। ও ফিফথেরটার জন্য তোমাকে মনে হয় ওয়েট করে থাকতে হবে আরেকটা।
একটা ওয়েট করছি।
ফিফথে জেনারেলি কেউ ব্যাকলগ পায় না, বা যার কপাল খুব খারাপ থাকে তাকে ওই আরও 6 মাস ওয়েট করে থাকতে হবে, মানে ওটা ওই তোমার তার পরের সেমিস্টারে গিয়ে হবে।
স্যার আর সিক্সথে পেলে
তাহলে 1 বছর, তাহলে 1 বছর ওয়েট করতে হবে আগে। Okay, so what is the super key? Super key is nothing, it's a set of attributes. It is what? It is a set of attributes which can uniquely identify each row of a relation, right? So it is a set of attributes. Now consider the student database. So in student database, what are the attributes are there? Student ID, name, phone and age. Okay, so if you consider a set of attribute to uniquely identify each row, so now student ID and phone, that can be a group, that can be the super key, pare to? Student ID itself a super key. Is it okay? Is it clear? Hello.
স্যার আর একবার
Super key is nothing but a set of attributes which helps to uniquely identify each row in the table. Now I have the student database. তো স্টুডেন্ট ডেটাবেসে কে কে আছে? কে কে আছে স্টুডেন্ট ডেটাবেসে? This is ID is there, name is there, okay, phone number is there and date of birth is there, suppose. Okay, so now what can be the super keys? Super key, okay. So ID can be the super key. ID can be the super key. হবে তো? That ID can be the super key, but that ID can uniquely identify each row of the table. Is it clear or not?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
ID and name can be the super key. in combination. Which I told you, this is a set of attribute. So
Yes, sir.
this also can be the super key. Okay. ID, comma, phone number. That also can be the super key.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Along phone number can also be the super key, because the phone number is uniquely, phone number is unique for everyone, right? Because same phone number is not given to two user. So by using the phone number also you can identify each row.
স্যার
হ্যাঁ,
স্টুডেন্টের ক্ষেত্রে একবারই দু ছেলে হলেও তো ফোন নাম্বার একই হতে পারে।
একবারে দুটো ছেলে হলে তো একই একই ফোন নাম্বার দিতে পারে।
বুঝলাম না।
একই বাড়ি থেকে দুটো ছেলে বা দুটো স্টুডেন্ট একই বাড়ি থেকে হলে
বাট
একটাই ফোন রয়েছে।
ইট ইজ পসিবল, আমি বলছি পসিবল সুপার কি বলেছি, তখন তোমাকে আইডিয়ার ফোন নাম্বার দিয়ে করতে হবে, তাই না? দ্যাট ক্যান বি দ্য সুপার কি।
Yes, sir.
আমি পসিবলগুলো বলছি, বিকজ সুপার কি ইজ হোয়াট, দিস আর সেট অফ অ্যাট্রিবিউটস যেখানে ইউনিকলি আইডেন্টিফাই করতে পারে। So phone number can be the super key, but yeah, that's true. In that case, that from the same home, if two person have given the same phone number, then this should be the key, ID and the phone number. This is uniquely identifying. This can uniquely identify each row, right? But date of birth of the date of birth of two student can be same, but if you combine these two, then it can be the super key. Right, so that we are not taking. Date of birth actually we are not taking, because it is not actually giving the significant a sense, because ID and number, this is giving a sense, ID and phone number, this is giving a sense, simple a phone number also giving the sense. So we are not taking generally the date of birth, but this is possible that ID and date of birth also can be form a super key. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Everyone? The key concept should be clear, because after that we will do the normalization. So in normalization everything should be neat and clean, because what the rest of the topics are there, so that functional dependency and all this, so that should be these are all depending on this key concept, right? So that should be clear. Candidate key. Here one thing is there, that super key is a superset of candidate key. Do you remember the set? Superset, subset. আচ্ছা, মনে আছে superset, subset?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So suppose A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 like that, right?
হ্যাঁ স্যার মনে আছে।
And sorry, B is lapok 3, 4. So you can say that B is the subset of A and A is the superset of B, like that, right? So like this. So why
Mic off, sir.
mic off? Okay. So super key is super key is the superset of candidate key. So what is the candidate key? This is the minimal set of field which can uniquely identify its record in a table. This is what, so I told you is super key what? These are all combinations of the super key, all combinations of the set of attributes which can uniquely identify each record, right? And candidate key is what? This is the minimal set of fields, মানে minimum কতগুলো attribute নিয়ে তুমি uniquely identify করতে পারো একটা টেবিলে প্রত্যেকটা রোকে। Is it clear? That's why candidate key is a minimal set of fields. Minimum number of attribute you have to choose by which you can uniquely identify. So in our example, so that student ID can uniquely identify each row.
Yes, sir.
Phone number itself can uniquely identify each row. যদি ধরে নি যে the phone number is different for each, isn't it?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, তাহলে হবে।
So this student ID, phone number, that can be the candidate key. Or it is possible also that more than one column also can be the candidate key, right? সেটাও possible. ধরো কোনো এক super key, then at that time can be the combination of 3 attributes. So in that case the candidate can be the combination of 2 attributes. Is it clear? All are related. So super key is the all possible combination of set of attributes which can uniquely identify each row in a table. Candidate key is what is the minimal set of fields which can uniquely identify each record in a table. Primary key is what? This is the appropriate, means this is the you can say that this is the minimal candidate key also, you can say. Primary key is what? This is a minimal candidate key, means this is the appropriate key which can uniquely identify the record. So student ID is the best option to become a primary key, because in every table you have to choose one, possibly one. If it is not possible, then more than one field to choose as a primary key, right? It is not possible to give the candidate key, composite key or super key constraint. In table only you have to give the primary key and the foreign key. So if you use two, if you use, suppose like in that case, suppose you are using ID and phone, these two as a key attribute in the table. So this one also treating as a primary key and this one also treating as a primary key. At that case, means it is actually theoretically it is known as the candidate key, but in প্রতিদিন এই সেম কেস ভালো লাগে না। প্রতিদিন এই একই টাইমে কারেন্টটা যায়, কেন যায় ভগবান জানে। তুমি থার্মোমিটারটা দাও, টাইম হয়ে গেছে দেওয়ার। আমাদের মোবাইলে তো নেট চলে না।
কি শেষ হয়ে গেল?
হ্যালো,
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
দাঁড়া আমার নেট চলে গেছিল। কারেন্ট এসছে নাকি আবার? ওকে, আচ্ছা। So is it clear? So in
শুনতে পাইনি স্যার।
Achha. Primary key is what? This is the minimal candidate key, right? So here the ID is actually chosen as a primary key in this table. Now there is no any such concept to implement the candidate key or the composite key or the super key when you are you will do the create the database, right? So there is a two concept, primary key and the foreign key. So if you consider two attributes to uniquely identify of a table, তো তখন আমাকে কি করতে হবে? You have to treat that ID as also primary key and phone number as also primary key. বোঝাতে পারলাম? But theoretically it is known as the candidate key. হ্যাঁ,
শেয়ার করছে?
শেয়ার বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে নাকি?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, সব বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে।
In this case, so এই যেটা বললাম আর কি, theoretically this ID is phone number, this combination is known as the candidate key, but আমাকে যখন when we will do the practical, this both I will actually treat as a primary key, right? But actually it is the candidate key. Clear? Is it clear? Primary key.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Next is the composite key. This is also what? That more than two or more attributes that uniquely identify a record in a table. And these are what? These are not the primary key. Right, these are not the primary key. Here you can see the score. In score, we have the student ID, subject ID, marks, and exam name. Right? Student ID is not the primary key of this table. So it is what? It is the foreign key. Score. So there we have the student ID, we have the subject ID, we have the subject name, we have the marks. Okay, like that. So this is one table. Now here, this is what? This is the foreign key here, right?
Yes, sir.
It is the foreign key because this is not the primary key, because this is the ID of another table. This is also foreign key because this is the primary key of subject table. So here if you combine these two, you can form the key of this key of score table. So here it is known as the composite key.
স্যার
বলো।
কিন্তু সাবজেক্ট টেবিলের যখন সাবজেক্ট আইডি রয়েছে তাহলে সাবজেক্ট নেম কি দরকার?
আরে এটা আমি এমনি দিয়েছি, মানে আমি জাস্ট বোঝানোর জন্য দিয়েছি, মানে এটা না দিলেও চলে। এখানে তুমি অন্য কিছু দিয়ে দাও তাহলেই হবে। এখানে তুমি কি দেবে? এখানে কি আছে? মার্কস, এক্সাম নেম আছে, এখানে এক্সাম নেমই দিয়ে দাও। ঠিক আছে? My concern is that, see, these two are not the key of this one, that score. These are all foreign key. So if you want to use any foreign key as a key of a particular table to uniquely identify the rows, then these are treated as the composite key. Okay. Any question?
No, sir.
Is the concept of key clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
এনজয়দের শরীর কেমন আছে?
স্যার ভালো আছে।
রিপোর্ট দিয়েছে এখন?
আগে হ্যাঁ, না আজকে
টেস্ট আছে এই মুখে?
হ্যাঁ,
টেস্ট স্মেল আছে?
কি বলছো শুনতে পাচ্ছি না।
বলছি টেস্ট স্মেল আছে, তাই বলছি।
হ্যাঁ, ওটা আছে, ওটা নিয়ে সমস্যা।
তাহলে টেস্ট করাতে গেলে কেন এখন?
মানে আলাদা এমনি প্রবলেম হচ্ছে।
ব্রিদিং প্রবলেম টবলেম হচ্ছে না তো?
না এখন হচ্ছে, তখন একটু হালকা হালকা হচ্ছে।
আগে ব্রিদিং প্রবলেম হচ্ছিল?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ।
সমস্যা সব দিকেই। আচ্ছা, enhanced model next দিন করাবো, because it consists of the subclass superclass, means it will consist of the concept. Enhanced ER model is nothing, it is the object oriented feature is infused with the ER model, because a simple ER model is have has some disadvantage, because it is not it cannot represent the real world problem properly, right? Some drawbacks are there of ER model, so that's why the object oriented features are infused or are added with that ER model. So that's why the class concept has also been infused here. The generalization, specialization, aggregation, these are also infused with that, so that it can easily convert into a relational table in an easy way, right? So these things we will do. That also we have done that in object oriented data models. ঠিক আছে, any question till now? বলো, কোন কোশ্চেন থাকলে বলো। হ্যালো,
Yes, sir.
আর কোনো কোশ্চেন নেই?
Good, sir.
ঠিক আছে, তাহলে আমি ক্লাস শেষ করলাম, কারোর কোনো কোশ্চেন না থাকে। অঙ্কিতা কিছু বলবে? মাইক অন আছে।
Sir, আপনার গ্লিচ হচ্ছে স্যার, মাইক অফ।
ঠিক আছে।